Welcome to Cambridge Podcasts. I'm Billy Pointon, and joining me is Hollie McNish, also known as Hollie Poetry, who's an award-winning poet known for her risque yet heartfelt subject matters and offbeat delivery. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me.
You've seen these same topics show up for time immemorial, you know.
Yeah.
It's love, death, whatever. Not as many people would have as be as open about things like sex and childbirth as you are.
Yeah.
So where did that inspiration come from? Because you don't see many people, discussing these rather sensitive issues.
I think it's just from the fact that my poems were always a diary. A lot of it, not all of it, and now it's also published. And I guess the first time I put something out, and like even one person said that it was helpful for someone to say a certain thing that they were maybe thinking but wouldn't say, or thought that they were the only one. I guess like the example would be about breastfeeding on the toilet. It was my daughter's dad that said I should put that up online, and I didn't bother. I didn't even put it in the first little album that I did.
So if you could read us another one of your poems.
Yeah.
Perhaps the Voldemort one?
Yeah, all right. Yeah, all right. I was trying to decide between Voldemort and Yankin, but I think Voldemort is annoyingly the politer one. Well, not annoyingly, but yeah, the way that we measure politeness anyway. So this is it's only called Voldemort because I like the bit in Harry Potter where Dumbledore, if you have watched Harry Potter or read it, says, "Call him Voldemort, Harry, always use the proper name for things. Fear of a name increases fear of the thing itself." And then I thought that's sort of the same with girls, that we don't have a name, so maybe it increases the fear of something if you can't name it, which is often been sort of, seems to be proven. So, I picked my kid up from preschool, and I love to see her face. I love to see her face as she runs to send a hug my way, as she runs to send a hug my way, same way as all the other kids. I pick my kid up from preschool, and she begs to go and play. She begs to go and play, same play as all the other kids. One boy's hand is down his pants. His mother shakes her head. My son, fiddling with his willy since the day he knew he had one. And everybody laughs, and the kids play in the park, and everybody laughs. Just like his dad then, someone says, and everybody laughs. Parents chat now, tales are told of last week's supermarket trip. Her 3-year-old son shouted, "My willy's hard, Mum, it feels so good," and everybody laughs. And the kids play in the park, and everybody laughs. Then the mother of a girl agrees. Hands always down her pants, she jokes. And everyone is awkward. Parents slowly filter off. The doctor told my grandma he would look at her downstairs last week. She went to grab her bag. The English language, perhaps the fullest in the world, over 15 words for rain. Everyone says willy, but no girl's word is the same. She's been fiddling with her fanny, too rude. She's been fiddling with her vulva, too grown. She's been fiddling with her clit, just no. She's been fiddling with herself since the day she knew how good it felt. He has been fiddling with his willy. She has been fiddling with her minnie, with her ninny, with her minky, with her mimsy, with her mimmy, with her minnie, with her moo-moo, with her mooey, with her moo, with her doo-doo, with her was-was, with her pum-pum, with her gina, with her vee-vee, with her foof, with her foo-foo, with her fam-fam, with her foofa-doof, her flu, her floof, her fuff, her wee-wee, wink, her wanny. That's about halfway through. With her boo-boo, her woo-woo, her hoo-ha, her tutu, with her noo-noo, her loo-la, her nunny, with her nook, with her twinkle, with her tuffet, with her fluffet, with her muffin, with her Janet, with her Mary Jane, her Lulabelle, her Cinderella, baby-ho, her Daisy, with her kipper, with her Kiki, with her tush, with her tuppy, with her penny, with her tuppence, with her twinkle, with her tufty, with her tulip, with her yoni, with her flower, with her craddock, her fandango, her fandangle, her fangita, with her whizzy, with her front bum, with her fairy, with her periwinkles, special place, her private parts, her girly parts, her lady bits, her tiddly pop, her plum. They have been fiddling with themselves since the day they knew how good it felt. When will everybody laugh? When the father of a girl agrees. Just like her mum then, someone says. When will everybody laugh? As the kids play in the park. As the kids play in the park.
Very good, thank you.
No problem. All those words, they were ones I did like a call out on social media and said, what do you ask your daughter to call hers? See, I don't even know what you call hers, and what were you asked to call yours? And I got so many responses. And actually, lots of people say that the best thing is we should be teaching young girls to just say vulva or vagina or clitoris, depending on what they're talking about. But there's not that same thing for boys. Nobody's saying we should teach a boy to say penis instead of willy, because it's not is not really a problem because this is a very common word, which I've just started writing about more just because I've been asked to basically write about sexual vocabulary for the dictionary, English Oxford Dictionary, because there's a real lack of like loads of stuff. I just wrote a poem about the fact there's no word for like wank for women, there's no word for erection, even though it's quite similar, the biological stuff of blood rushing to you, like getting a bit swollen, getting wet, all that stuff, but just these words that exist for male anatomy, although the biology exists for females, there's literally no language.
There's no words to describe.
There's no words.
It,
There's no specific word, and there's no like fun words. Like there's masturbate, but there's not wank or there's
slang. Yeah.
Yeah, there's no slang, which you need. You need
sure,
slang
just
for
day-to-day
sex
discussion.
because
Otherwise,
it's
it sounds
more
very
fun.
It's very clinical. Otherwise, yeah.
Could you masturbate me to orgasm? Like, oh, like, well, at any age, I don't think. Maybe unless you're in a role play or something. I don't know. But yeah, I think it's fascinating, and I find it from a like writing point of view. I find it fascinating as well because the English language is so brilliant to write in. Like we've got
the most
many
words.
like sort of unnecessary words. Yeah, exactly. Well, not unnecessary, but so specific. But we don't even have like a kid's word like the equivalent of willy. Like just doesn't exist. It exists in French, it exists in Danish, it exists in Swedish. But in English we've got the word willy, but like there's no childish female word. It just doesn't exist. It just doesn't exist as a word. They're all different. There's not one that everyone uses, doctors use. So yeah, it's I find it fascinating.
I mean, yeah, this is just sort of a new idea I've just had actually.
Yeah.
If you think about the words that we do have, for instance, we have countless words for boobs, countless words for bum.
Yeah.
So it could be more that there are words, a lot of words for things that men will pay attention to.
Yeah,
Almost.
maybe.
I mean, that's just a theory.
No, I think it's true because it's the same with like when I was at school, it's like the word. It's so funny. Even I still find it troubling saying the word vagina or vulva, and it's just like I shouldn't have trouble with it, but I do. But in school, you're taught like boys have a penis and girls have a vagina. So even that is incorrect. Like the vagina is not the equivalent of a penis, the clitoris is, but God knows we don't teach about the clitoris in anatomy. And the vagina is like taught, it doesn't include anything but like the hole, which is where the penis goes in penetrative. Like it's all just to do with penetrative sex, basically. It seems like the whole of the education is, but that's just because we can politely teach it as reproduction. And the rest of it, we would be moving into the realms of pleasure, which God forbid we tell. Well, sort of God forbid in a way. Like that's sort of one of the reasons I guess.
I suppose there is that sort of. You would have, especially in America, the sex education was very minimal. It was. So where I grew up in Boston, which is actually quite a liberal place.
Yeah.
Even then we were taught, abstinence is the best contraception, and if you must have sex, always use a condom or you will get pregnant and die.
But also, is that if, like, the minute they teach about using condoms, you're not teaching about reproduction anymore, you're teaching about pleasure, but you're still just teaching about penetration.
Yes.
So, like, the idea that you can't say, the minute you feel this, like, spend an hour massaging each other's private parts, like, this will feel great. You can't get an STD, you can't get pregnant, you can't have an unwanted pregnancies, you can't, none of this. So if we're allowed to teach about condoms in sex, we are teaching about pleasure, but not so much female pleasure, mainly male pleasure. And then to say that we then can't talk about like masturbation or other things which are much safer than that and just as pleasurable, it's like, it's such a weird territory. I find it so odd.
But then I do think there needs to be a line drawn somewhere. I don't think people would be comfortable with their 16-year-old daughter learning how to give a good blowjob.
No,
for instance.
But the 16-year-old daughter is learning how to put on a condom in order to let
no, absolutely.
Like to have sex, and like in life experience and all the studies that I've read, like for women in straight relationships, they're the ones that have least orgasms of anyone because of the focus on penetrative sex. Like women in same-sex relationships have a hell of a lot more orgasms in relationships.
That's what I've heard, yeah.
No problems with unwanted pregnancies, no problems with unwanted orgasms, no contraception needed,
Yeah.
no pill taken, hormones pumped into your body, nothing, and more pleasure. So I think that still the focus on like, yeah, teaching a good idea, teaching a girl how to put on a condom, or a boy how to put on a condom, but it's still less safe and it's still less pleasurable. But it's quite a big societal matter, I think. It's quite hard to, I think, if I don't know, just I found it weird that in class, we're not allowed to mention like masturbation, but I had like 3 lessons of how to put a condom on a fake penis or a carrot.
Oh yeah,
it's like, well,
cucumber I had. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like this is you're teaching me to have the one type of sex that could lead to issues and isn't necessarily going to give me the most pleasure anyway. Yeah. It is rubbish, and I do think it's more rubbish for girls because of that like bias. I mean, I'm pretty sure it is. I've read about 700 pages of research on it in the last 2 months because I've been studying it and I've been writing a lot about it. But I think it, I guess the more people write about it, maybe like I was reading in the dictionary when I was trying to write, and I looked up the word wank because I wondered if it would be defined in the dictionary as being a gender neutral word, and it wasn't, which I thought was a shame because loads of, especially younger females I know, do use that word, and now it's becoming more open for girls to talk about masturbation. So I was like, oh, that's a shame that it's just says for male in the dictionary. And if I was a young girl and I looked it up and it said for male, I'd probably more feel like there was something wrong with me doing it or using the word. And then one of the examples, like they always have these examples from like old books and literature and history, and the example was something like Nancy stood in the bush with her knickers around her ankles and took a penny a wank from the boys queuing up. I was like, right, so it's like, oh, what is wrong with the English language? Exactly. So if I was a girl and I looked this up in the dictionary, like the definition of our English language, this is the example, and I'm not. It is awful. It is awful.
I'm glad you're going about changing that then.
Well, I hope so, because I do sometimes think, like Sweden. One of the poems in the book Plum is called Voldemort for stupid Harry Potter reasons, but like no, not stupid. I think Harry Potter's great. But Sweden had the same thing with like Willy. It had the one word for boys, or genitals, I guess, or penis, and no word for girls. But they had a big petition because they said there were problems with little girls not really knowing what to call it and doctors not knowing what to call it, and people sort of like, I've written in this poem, there's about 700 words people sent me, like foo-foo, fandango, like your flower, like just, there's so many different words, and it's so confusing when you're little, like what is she talking about? Oh, you're talking about your front bum, or like, oh God, just give us a word. And in Sweden they had that, and they said little girls were more likely to feel shameful because they just because they don't have a word, like if you don't have a word to say something, like Voldemort, you're not meant to say it, that was why it's called Voldemort. But they changed it. So they petitioned the government thought of a word, they made up this word, and they just sent it to like all the doctors, all the nurses, all the schools, and it's totally in the language. So I think English is one of the only languages that still...
That would have been an interesting committee to be on.
Just trying to think of the word. But yeah, it's not all I'm writing about, but at the moment it seems to, the more I read about it, the more I think, it's such an annoying problem because it could cause, like it could create lots more pleasure and lots less like problems. Like there's sort of nothing negative that could come out of it apart from, I guess, young people having too much pleasure against our ideas of what pleasure we should allow them. I don't know. And young people and older people, actually, it's not just a young person.
You know, I've never got to experience sort of the pre-internet age, for instance.
Which is...
by the time I was, I think, 10, everyone already had phones in their hand. So I've never not had that online presence.
But I guess, because I don't know if, like, because I guess I've had, like, and I say sex, I mean like sexual experiences. I think the word sex needs to be like redefined a wee bit. But like, So, yeah, I've had sex like pre-internet and I've had it post-internet. And I guess I don't know what it's like if you've totally grown up with it. Like I've written quite a lot about like feeling sorry for people that have only grown up with. It's not so much internet. I think internet can be incredible. And yeah, really, like the amount of stuff that you can find out on the internet is amazing. And for loneliness and stuff, social media, I guess again, when I became a mum, I was up all night quite a lot of the time, like feeding every 2 hours, and it was really lonely sometimes. Like when my daughter's dad's in bed and everyone else is sleeping, the only thing you've got sometimes is the internet, and I'm sure a lot of people have that. I guess it's the same reason why people sit with their television on all the time if they live on their own. It's just like company, but this is, the internet's more real than watching TV in a way, so actually I like it for that. But for, I don't know, for stuff to do with sex, and I just think back to my I had a nice time at school. I had a nice group of friends, and yeah, I had like good parties and stuff, and the idea of the certain things that I've done, anyone taking a photo of it, or even just people taking photos all the time, or just sitting on their phones. Like as soon as we got to a party, all you could do is either like, I don't know, chat or dance or snog or get fingered. Yeah, I don't know what it's like. I've been to quite a few parties where people do have phones, and I do think people seem to do less dancing, less snogging, less chatting, more showing people stuff that they've seen, which is also quite fun. Like I'm not against it all.
Is it not just the type of parties that you go to have changed?
No, I don't think so. I think no, I don't. Like people often think as you get older, a lot of the time they're going to be more tame, I guess. But I think for me it's the opposite. I was a pretty well behaved teenager. I'm less well behaved now, I think, and actually I've just have access to going out more.
That's good. Yeah. By all means, I don't think you should stop going out, having fun at whatever arbitrary age.
Yeah. But I just mean the parties I would go to now, I think, are less likely to be the ones where people would have phones out all the time or just be chatting or
well, it's also changed the way we view dating as well. Because I know that your relationships are a source of inspiration for your poetry as well. Like for instance, I don't know if you've tried Tinder.
I have never, but I was with my daughter's dad for 12 years and I'm with my current boyfriend for 3, so I've not.
So not really had that.
I've only ever met people in person. Not that I wouldn't. I think in a way that those sort of dating apps are really good. I like the idea of being able to meet people rather than just relying on meeting them either from school or work.
No, and it's definitely just the idea of everyone having this device on them has just changed sort of even the practicality of dating.
Yeah.
Like you can establish before you meet someone what it's for, why you're meeting this person, what you want from that sort of relationship, and also just things like a text, I'm going to be 10 minutes late. I can't imagine living in a time where you couldn't do that, where you say beforehand, you establish, I'll meet you here at this time tomorrow.
You just take a book with you, just wait. Or go into a cafe, have a drink.
But if they say, sorry, I need to cancel, you can't know that. Like that's incomprehensible to me.
I guess there's not that many times where you do have to cancel something, though. I don't think.
Well, I mean, it's just an example.
Yeah, no, totally. I was thinking that the other day. I was like, what did I used to do when it was like just a group of us and just. Yeah, but
if you
it is
wanted
good
to
for
meet
that.
up with your friends even at the pub, how do you can't just send them a text, You need to establish beforehand, right, let's go to the pub at this time,
Yeah. And it's funny thinking back to it, because actually I'm not sure if I can remember how I did that. I guess I had loads more people just calling on me. So I had loads more like just knocks on the door. I don't really get that now because people call and ask if you're in. So I had quite a lot of like friends chucking stuff at my window on a Saturday morning, or just coming round, but that totally depends where you are. So I reckon if you live somewhere where you don't live close to friends, then it's brilliant. But yeah, dating apps as well, knowing what you want from a date seems like a really good thing. Basically, full stop, I think. And I guess you get the same, like you do get the tingles, I guess. It just seems so much easier to say stuff.
It's easier to say online, definitely.
Than when you meet face to face. But then I guess, you know, when you meet face to face, you're always still going to have that awkward thing. Like someone was saying, oh, you know, it's terrible that people only meet online now. It's like, yeah, but like not always, obviously, but the majority of the time they then meet in person, and then you'll still get the nervous feeling that I had when we only met in person. It's just, I guess you've got this stuff beforehand. It's just, sometimes I think that the ease of like, especially being like sexual in I find that quite funny, seeing like just how easy it is to say stuff. And then I think in some ways maybe that adds to the awkwardness when it's in person, because you have had this ability to be like maybe more confident than you are, and then it's like, oh, I've got to live up to this. I need to
actually talk to this person with my mouth, and
But if you're shy, then maybe it is a good thing. And actually, we always had different ways of communicating. You know, I remember I had a boyfriend at school, and we were more shy in class together. This is when I was like 17, but then we'd talk on the phone
endlessly
every night, like loads and loads, and then we'd see each other, and it was like, and then we'd go to like a nightclub, and then it was even more like, or you know, if you're in a group of friends compared to when you're on your own with someone. I think there's loads of different levels of that, so I don't think
Definitely.
It ruins that.
I mean, what do you think of this new idea of hookup culture that's been tossed about recently? Of you know, if you go on Tinder, you meet up with this person once, you know, do whatever with them, never see them again.
I genuinely couldn't care less what people do if it's consensual. I think it's the most ridiculous thing to be annoyed about to consensual adults, I'd say, doing anything that's not hurting anyone else. Like, I don't care if you want to meet someone online in order to meet up with them, pour oil all over your body and eat feathers together. I don't know, whatever it is people want. But I don't care. I think there's so many problems in relationships that are seen as like the standard sort of relationship. There's so much shame to do with relations. If two people want to dress up as a pair of rabbits and like, I genuinely don't care. Like, so if there's two consenting adults that both just want to have sex or just want to do whatever it is, and they meet, then great. I don't think they did. I think that's why I talk about sex so much, because actually I don't think girls often do have. There's more shame on it, and there's much less conversations about it. There's much less language to do with females. Like even the word to wank in the Oxford English Dictionary is defined as for males. Masturbation. Like there's no female jokey equivalent apparently that exists in the English language.
No, I can't think of one.
No, and it doesn't say for males and females, even though lots of girls use that word. So I think it was different. A lot of girls I know did things to boys before they did things to themselves, whereas not one boy I've ever met did that.
Oh, no.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
so I think that's got to change. But people, I don't know, like, it seems like a risque subject matter, and it is, but I think it's more like important than it's given.
No, I agree. I think it's a risque subject matter, but it shouldn't necessarily be, because everyone goes through it.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, as a once teenage boy, you know, if you add this layer of shame to it, then it makes you feel like you're disgusted with your own body. You're like, what is happening to me? And I think that, you know, often if you read about, if you're a teenage boy and you read about through a puberty book about what's going to happen to your body, then it's sort of presented as a shameful thing. Yeah. Whereas if it was presented as a totally normal thing, I think we could completely change the attitudes we have towards that. And definitely, I mean, I can't speak from a teenage girl's perspective, but I imagine it's much the same for them.
Yeah, I think that's funny that you should say that, because I always imagined there's quite a lot more shame for girls. Like I always thought when you know, periods are pretty horrible to deal with, especially when you're younger. But all the time, they're pretty annoying a lot of the time. But like I remember as a teenage girl being told not to use a tampon until I'd had sex, because that is like you're now not a virgin because you've used a tampon. So I was told to use like sanitary towels, and this is the sort of stuff that people think is vulgar to talk about, but it affects like your everyday life as you're growing up. And I was told to do that, and I played loads and loads of sport, and it just doesn't cut it to not use a tampon. I remember thinking, oh, but if I put this thing inside me, am I gonna then, you know, even that is like shamed, which is horrendous. And I remember at school, like, which is like often still the case, I know they've added like relationships and sort of love into the sex education, but there's still this very one-sided thing about orgasms, because obviously guys, in order to teach reproductive sex, which you're allowed to teach in biology, and it's not, you know, it's totally fine to teach it because it's about reproduction, teaches about the male orgasm. Obviously, to actually have a baby, a woman doesn't need an orgasm. So if you want to teach about the female orgasm, then you then have to teach about pleasure, which is much more likely to be banned as a lesson, because you can't teach it from this like reproductive biological point of view. So for a female, from that point of view, when you're young, you learn, well, I was taught that sex is like penetration. I wasn't taught that it was anything else. So you're taught the only type of sex that could get you pregnant, could like basically lead to unwanted pregnancies, or lead to like dangerous abortions, or lead to you having to spend your whole life on like contraception or using all different things.
Or
for this
abstinence
one,
is the best
or
contraception.
abstinence, yeah, for this one type of sex, which is one of like loads of different things you can do, which are often more pleasurable for women, but you're not taught it at school because it's not reproduction, and reproduction is the only like allowed subject matter. So I find all that sort of stuff, I find it fascinating. Like I wrote, there's a poem in this book called Yanking, and it was about one of my friends, like, to put it in the polite way, like masturbating her boyfriend, but not knowing how to do it. And and she asked all of us, and we all obviously female, like we didn't know how to do it either. None of us asked any of the boys that we were friends with. She didn't ask her boyfriend, and she really like injured him. And it's just it's sort of a funny poem about the like movement. But I wouldn't sort of dare read that out to kind of 14-year-olds at school, even though we were 14 when it happened. And then one school I went into, it was an international school in Basel, and they asked me specifically to read it to like 16 plus ages. And it was so funny, and all the girls and boys started talking to each other about it, and like, oh my god, that must have been really painful, and the boys were like, oh, and like, nothing bad happened from talking about it. And then I said, I had like the next age group was like year 9, I think, or it was 13 to 14-year-olds. And I said to the teacher, obviously I'll change like the set for this next gig. And the school nurse, it was a boarding school, and the school nurse was like, don't change, like you've got my permission as the school nurse to read this poem. And afterwards I was, you know, there's obviously some people having sex at 13, some people haven't even felt a tinge of excitement like in their body at that. I don't mean excitement, sexual excitement. So different. Goes
through a different
stages. So it's really hard to not to talk about things, and that not to be like pressure that, oh, you should be thinking about this. If you're genuinely more interested in anything else, which is also likely. But I had this group of sort of 14-year-old boys and girls afterwards, and they were just talking to each other. And I remember this little girl said, oh, I'll be terrified if I ever want to do that to someone. And the fact she said if I want to, not if they want me to do it, gave me like hope. And then this little boy, who must have been about this tall, he was like, you're terrified, it's me that's got the willy. And I was like it was just so nice. And I thought, why are we so worried about talking about this in school?
No, I totally agree with you. I think instead of leaving the 14-year-olds with various experience to, you know, discuss it amongst themselves, because God knows what they'll come up with, you need a sort of more nuanced adult view of sex, because everyone's going to go through it, and it shouldn't be such a taboo topic. So I think we'll be wrapping up in a minute. Is there anywhere that people can read your poetry or see you live?
Well, there's like 4 books that I've got. So Plum's the latest one. Nobody Told Me is the one that's about becoming a parent, trying to become a parent. And then I'm touring most of the time, so just sort of constantly. So next year's tour's almost sorted. So if you just go to holliepoetry.com or holliemcnish.com, then all the tour dates will be up there. Yeah.
And any chance of the next book?
Yeah, I just had a meeting yesterday actually about the next book. I don't normally write a book as a book. I sort of write a lot when I fancy, and then I guess it's just now a thing of like how to put it together and what to share and what not. That's normally the decision, and then once I've sorted that, to relook at the poems and hopefully try and make them a bit better with an editor.
Oh, look forward to reading it.
Thank
Hollie,
you.
it's been a pleasure, and I hope to see you soon.
Yeah, you too. Thank you.